Rain was falling in fine silver threads, soft enough to be poetic, cold enough to sting. The city looked washed out under the streetlights, its colors faded, its noises dulled. I walked without direction, my umbrella long forgotten at home, the weight of my thoughts heavier than the rain itself. That's when I saw it. The little bookstore, the one I'd passed 100 times on my way to work, but never entered. Its windows glowed with a warm amber light, the kind that feels like an invitation. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe it was the exhaustion in my bones. Maybe it was fate, quietly tugging at my sleeve. When I pushed the door open, a soft bell chimed overhead, a fragile, melodic sound that seemed to echo in my chest. The air smelled like coffee, dust, and old pages. Books lined every wall, stacked high and uneven, the kind of chaos that only a book lover could understand. And behind the counter stood him. At first I thought I was imagining things. He looked up from a book he was reading, a thick, worn volume, and our eyes met. Something in that look made the room feel smaller, like the walls were closing in. There was no smile, no welcome, just quiet recognition. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was low, calm, but there was something strange in it, something that made my stomach tighten. "I'm just looking," I said quickly, brushing rain off my coat. He nodded once, but his gaze lingered, as if he were waiting for something more. I moved through the aisles, pretending to browse. The wood floor creaked beneath my boots. My fingers traced spines absent-mindedly, Austen, Fitzgerald, Murakami. But then something stopped me cold. On a small display table near the back sat a leather-bound journal. My journal, it couldn't be, and yet it was. Same worn cover, same coffee stain on the corner, same initials etched faintly into the back. E.M., my breath caught. I hadn't seen that journal in 2 years. I'd lost it during my move. Or at least, that's what I thought. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. When I opened it, my handwriting stared back at me. Messy loops and scribbles, raw emotions spilled across lined paper. Private thoughts, painful memories, secrets. I turned around slowly. He was standing right behind me. "I believe that belongs to you," he said softly. There was no apology in his tone, no explanation, just certainty. My voice shook. "Where did you get this?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "You left it at a cafe. 2 winters ago," I blinked. "That's impossible. I looked everywhere." "You didn't look in the right place," he interrupted gently. His calmness was unnerving, like someone who knew exactly how to disarm me. "I read it," he added after a moment. Those 3 words hit me like thunder. My throat went dry. "You what?" He didn't flinch. I had to. I thought maybe it would help me understand something. "Understand what?" I demanded, my voice cracking. He stepped closer, eyes glinting in the soft light. "Why your words felt like mine." The silence that followed was suffocating. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears. He smiled faintly then. Not cruelly, not kindly, just knowingly. "I didn't mean to scare you, but you should know." He paused, eyes locked with mine. "I've been waiting for you to come back." The room spun slightly. My pulse raced. I wanted to leave. Every rational part of me screamed to walk out that door. But something held me still. Curiosity, fear, recognition? I couldn't tell. He extended a hand as if offering peace. "Let's start over," he said. "I'm Nathan." I didn't take his hand. Instead, I whispered the question that had already taken root in my mind. "Why me?" His expression softened, and for the briefest moment I saw sadness behind his calm. "Because," he said quietly, "your words saved my life once." His words hung in the air. "Your words saved my life once." I stared at him, unsure whether to feel flattered, terrified, or both. How could my journal save anyone? I asked, my voice trembling between disbelief and caution. Nathan leaned against a nearby shelf, his movements slow, deliberate, as if every gesture carried meaning. "You wrote about pain," he said softly, "about loneliness, about trying to find a reason to wake up when the world felt empty. You don't remember writing that?" My throat tightened. I did remember. Those were nights when silence felt heavier than the dark. When words were my only way out. I wrote that for myself, I whispered. He nodded, and somehow it found me. I wanted to ask how, but something in his tone, the way he said it, almost reverently, stopped me. He continued, his voice barely above the rain pattering against the window. I was sitting in that cafe, same night you left it behind. I was not in a good place. I opened it because it looked abandoned. I read the first page, and it felt like someone had finally understood what I couldn't say out loud. My chest felt hollow. It was one thing to have someone read your private words, another to realize they'd lived through them. He looked down, smiling faintly. I kept it because I didn't know how to let go. It reminded me that I wasn't completely alone. I never meant for anyone to read it, I said, almost defensively. I know, he said quietly, but if I hadn't, I might not be standing here right now. There was no drama in his tone, just truth. And something inside me softened. He wasn't dangerous. He was broken in a way I understood all too well. For a long moment we just stood there. The smell of coffee, the sound of rain, the warmth of the lights. Everything felt suspended, fragile. Finally I spoke. So what now? You've read my life. You've kept my words. Why tell me all this now? Nathan's gaze lifted, calm but unreadable. Because sometimes, he said, you need to meet the person who unknowingly kept you alive. He smiled again. A faint, sad smile. And maybe I just wanted to thank you. We sat together in silence for what felt like hours. He made coffee, strong, slightly bitter, and we talked. Not about the journal anymore, but about everything else. The world, books, music, the strange ways life twists when you're not paying attention. He told me he ran the bookstore alone, that he preferred it that way, that some days he'd rather talk to the books than the people buying them. I get that, I said softly. Sometimes words feel safer than people. He looked at me with something like recognition. Exactly, he said. That's why you're writing. It felt familiar, like reading my own thoughts. There was something in his eyes when he said that, a quiet intensity that made me look away. When I glanced at the clock, hours had passed. The rain had stopped. The city outside had gone to sleep. I should go, I said, slipping my bag over my shoulder. Nathan nodded. Of course. But there was hesitation in his eyes. The kind that says goodbye feels too final. As I turned to leave, he spoke again. You can take the journal. It's yours after all, I hesitated. You sure? He smiled faintly. I've memorized half of it by now. Something inside me warmed, part amusement, part unease. I took the journal, clutching it close like an old friend returned. When I looked back, he was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out into the quiet street. Thank you, I said. For what? For not letting it end as just words. That night, as I lay in bed, the city humming softly outside, I opened the journal again. Flipping through the pages, I noticed something new. Neat handwriting that wasn't mine. Small notes in the margins. Tiny replies to my words. You're not alone. I've felt this too. Don't give up. Keep breathing. A shiver ran through me. He hadn't just read my story. He'd written himself into it. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept hearing his voice, calm, steady, haunting in the quiet. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the notes he had written in the margins of my journal. You're not alone. Keep breathing. I've felt this too. Those words replayed in my mind like echoes from another lifetime. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I didn't owe him anything, that what happened was strange, maybe even intrusive. But 3 days later, I found myself standing in front of the same bookstore again. It was late afternoon. Golden light spilled through the narrow street, catching on the wet pavement. Inside, I could see him shelving books, moving with that same quiet focus. When I pushed open the door, the bell chimed again, a familiar sound that somehow felt different now. He looked up immediately, surprise flickering across his face, then softening into something else. Something I couldn't quite name. "You came back," he said. "I had questions," I replied, though I wasn't sure that was true. He smiled faintly. "You don't seem like someone who comes back for questions." "Then maybe I came back for answers." Nathan leaned on the counter, thoughtful. "Sometimes those are the same thing." There was a silence between us. Not awkward, just heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, I placed the journal on the counter. "You wrote in it." He hesitated, then nodded. "I did. I shouldn't have, but it felt wrong not to reply." "Why?" He took a deep breath. "Because you were talking to someone who wasn't there, and I wanted to be there." His honesty disarmed me. There was no pretension in his voice, only quiet truth. I opened the journal to one of the marked pages. My handwriting read, "I don't think anyone really sees me anymore." And underneath, his response, "Maybe you've just been looking in the wrong places." My throat tightened. "You wrote this 2 years ago?" He nodded. "Every time I reread your words, I added something. It became our conversation, one you didn't know we were having. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to be angry. Another part, a softer, lonelier part, felt seen for the first time in years." "You said my words saved your life," I murmured. "How bad was it?" Nathan looked away, eyes distant. "Let's just say there were nights I didn't think I'd see morning. Your words reminded me that pain doesn't mean it's over. Sometimes it's just a page you have to turn." For a moment, I couldn't speak. He was a stranger, yet he understood the corners of my soul like he'd lived there. "You could have returned the journal," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "I know. But then I'd lose the only thing that kept me alive." We talked again that evening. Longer this time, about the books we loved, the things we'd lost, the small miracles that no one else notices. He told me his parents had owned the bookstore before him, that it was the only thing he'd kept after they were gone. He spoke of it like a living thing, like it had carried him through the storm. I told him about the things I'd stopped believing in. Love, promises, forever. "You sound like someone who's been hurt," he said gently. I gave a small, bitter laugh. "Aren't we all?" He smiled, but there was pain behind it. Some people just hide it better. As the sky darkened, I realized hours had passed again. It was easy talking to him. Too easy. When I finally stood to leave, he said something that made me pause. "You know, maybe we were meant to meet like this, not through introductions or chance, but through words." I turned back to look at him, the soft glow of the lamp framing his face. He looked both fragile and infinite. "Maybe," I said quietly. "Or maybe fate just likes to play games." He chuckled, low and tired. "If it does, I'm not sure who's winning." I smiled faintly. "Good night, Nathan." As I reached for the door, his voice stopped me. "Evelyn?" I turned. He hesitated, and in that moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. "Don't let the past make you afraid of what's still possible." I didn't answer. I just nodded, stepped outside, and let the cool air kiss my skin. For the first time in years, the night didn't feel empty. It felt alive, like something unseen had quietly begun to move. That night I dreamt of the bookstore, but it was different. Empty shelves, flickering lights, and Nathan, standing at the end of a long aisle, whispering words I couldn't hear. When I woke up, my first thought was that I needed to see him again. That night is burned into my memory like a dream I can never quite wake up from. The rain had started early, soft at first, then heavy enough to drown the city lights in silver streaks. I sat by my apartment window, the one overlooking the street where I had first seen him. I didn't even know his name back then, just that his presence made the air feel different. I had met him only twice before that night. Once at the coffee shop, where he stood behind me in line, humming quietly to himself, the same tune I couldn't stop hearing in my head afterward. The second time, outside my office building, where he offered me his umbrella after noticing I was getting soaked in the rain. I refused, trying to act strong, but I remember him smiling. That kind of smile that feels like it's looking right into your soul. But that night, that was when everything changed. It was late, almost midnight, when the power went out across my block. The city went quiet in a strange way. My phone had no signal, and the darkness felt heavier than usual. I lit a candle, sat down with a book, trying to ignore the storm outside. That's when I heard the knock. 3 slow knocks. My chest tightened. No one ever visited me that late. For a moment, I thought it was the wind or my imagination, but then I heard it again, firmer this time. I walked to the door, my hands trembling. When I opened it, he was standing there, drenched, his hair sticking to his forehead, his eyes catching the candlelight in a way that made him look both unreal and familiar. "Your light was the only one still on," he said softly, his voice carrying over the thunder. "I didn't mean to scare you." I remember just standing there, my heart racing. He looked lost but calm, like he'd come exactly where he needed to be. I let him in. As he stepped inside, the warmth of the candle flickered across his face. He smiled faintly, brushing rain from his jacket. "The storm hit harder than I expected," he said. "I was on my way home, but my car broke down." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second it felt like time stopped. We talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing, about how he used to write songs but hadn't touched a piano in years, about how I always felt like something was missing, even when my life seemed perfectly fine from the outside. It was strange, like we had known each other for lifetimes, yet this was our first real conversation. At one point the candle burned low, and the shadows stretched across the room. I remember his voice, low, thoughtful, saying, "You ever feel like some people are meant to meet, even if the world has to twist itself to make it happen?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and then he reached out, slow, careful, and brushed his fingers against mine. It was a small touch, but it felt like an entire story unfolding without words. We didn't say anything after that for a long while, just sat there, the storm outside fading, the silence between us soft and electric. When the lights finally flickered back to life, he stood up. "Guess the world's back to normal," he said with a small smile, though there was something sad in his eyes. He turned toward the door, paused, then looked back at me. "I'm glad I found your light tonight." And just like that, he was gone. But something in me changed that night. I didn't know what exactly. Maybe it was the feeling that sometimes people walk into your life not to stay, but to remind you that you're still alive. The next morning, I went out to look for him. I went to the street where his car had supposedly broken down, but there was nothing there. No car, no trace. When I asked around, no one had seen anyone matching his description. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he spoke. The way it felt like I'd known him before. Then, a week later, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No name, no return address. Inside, there was a single note, handwritten. It said, "Sometimes, the right night changes everything. Thank you for keeping your light on." And beneath it was a small pressed flower, the same kind that grew near the cafe where we first met. I still keep that note in my drawer. And every time it rains, I catch myself staring at the window, wondering if someday he'll walk by again. The days passed like blurred pages in a book I couldn't put down but didn't fully understand. Every morning, I'd glance at the note again, the delicate handwriting, the pressed flower still intact. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, a quiet ache I couldn't explain. I started visiting the same cafe again, the one where I first saw him. I'd sit by the window, order my usual black coffee, and watch the door every few minutes, pretending I wasn't waiting. But I was. I was waiting for him. Weeks went by. The city shifted from the soft golds of late autumn to the brittle chill of winter. My friends noticed I had become distant, quieter. "You look like someone waiting for a story to finish," one of them said once. I just smiled, not sure how to answer. Then one evening it happened. The cafe was nearly empty. The soft hum of jazz played in the background, and outside, snow had just started to fall, the first of the season. I was halfway through my coffee when the bell above the door rang. I looked up and froze. He was standing there. Same eyes, same half-smile. Only now, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman, tall, graceful, with a warmth in her expression that made my heart tighten. They looked like they belonged together. She was laughing softly at something he said, her hand brushing against his sleeve as if they shared a secret language. He didn't notice me at first. But when his eyes finally met mine, time slowed again. His expression shifted, a flicker of recognition, of something heavy, unspoken. I felt my breath catch. He walked over slowly, leaving the woman to order. "You kept your light on," he said, voice low, almost like a memory. I didn't know what to say. "You disappeared," I whispered. He smiled faintly. Maybe I was never really gone. It wasn't enough. I wanted to ask him 1,000 things. Who he really was, what that night meant, why he had written that note. But the words tangled in my throat. Then she joined us, the woman. "Oh, so this is her," she said warmly, turning to me. "He told me you helped him that night. He wouldn't stop talking about how kind you were." Her voice was kind, disarming even. I forced a small smile. "I'm glad he was safe," I managed to say. She reached out her hand. "I'm Lily," she said. "His sister." For a moment, everything inside me stilled. Sister. Not girlfriend. Not wife. Sister. He looked almost amused at my expression, but didn't comment. Lily smiled again. "You must have been worried. He told me later he shouldn't have shown up like that. It was a long drive back home, and his car really did break down." I nodded, but inside, I was still processing everything. Relief, confusion, maybe a hint of embarrassment. I had built a mystery around him, turned him into a story, and maybe he was just a man caught in a storm. But as we talked, something in his gaze told me there was more. After a few minutes, Lily excused herself to take a call outside. The cafe grew quiet again. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't lie about everything," he said. "The night we met, it meant something to me too." I met his eyes. "Then why disappear?" He hesitated. "Because I was scared. You reminded me of someone I lost a long time ago." The words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. He continued. "Her name was Alara, my fiancée. She died 3 years ago in a car accident. Since then, I haven't really connected with anyone. That night, when I saw you through the window light, you looked exactly like her. Same calmness, same way of holding your book." My heart tightened. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He nodded. "You don't have to be. I just didn't know how to explain it without sounding insane. I didn't mean to vanish, but when I left your apartment that night, I realized maybe the universe wasn't giving me her back. Maybe it was giving me a chance to feel again." There was a raw honesty in his voice that broke something open inside me. When Lily returned, the moment faded. He smiled at me one last time. "Maybe we'll talk again," he said, and they left, just like that. I thought it would be the end of the story, but it wasn't. That night, as I walked home, I found another note slipped under my apartment door. Same handwriting. It said, "You looked like her that night. But now you just look like you, and that's even better." I didn't know what to make of it. But for the first time in months, I smiled. The next morning, I went back to the cafe, not to wait, but just to sit, to breathe, to exist. Yet deep down, I had a feeling, a quiet certainty that this wasn't the end. That maybe, just maybe, the stranger who had walked into my life on a stormy night wasn't done rewriting my story. It's strange how silence can become a language of its own. After that night, I started to understand what it meant to feel something quietly. No grand gestures, no dramatic goodbyes, just small, invisible shifts inside me. Days blurred into weeks again. The snow deepened across the city, layering the streets in soft white stillness. I went about my days as usual, working, reading, cooking for one, but something had changed. I no longer felt like I was waiting for someone. Instead, I felt like someone was waiting for me. I didn't see Adrian for 2 weeks. Not in the cafe, not by accident on the street. It was almost as if the universe had pulled him back into the same silence from where he'd first emerged. Until one morning, I found a small envelope under my apartment door. My name, Clara, written in that same careful handwriting. Inside, there was a note. I owe you a story. Meet me where the city meets the sea. Sunday, noon. No signature, just that. I read it over and over, trying to decide if it was reckless to go. But deep down, I already knew I would. Sunday came cold and windless. The air smelled like salt and snow, an odd mixture that made my heart feel both heavy and light. I reached the coast just before noon. The ocean was calm, gray, almost glass-like. And there he was, standing near the edge of the pier, hands in his coat pockets, watching the horizon as though it might answer something he hadn't dared to ask. When he turned and saw me, his eyes softened, not surprised, but relieved. You came, he said quietly. You asked, I replied. He smiled. Fair. For a few minutes we just stood there, listening to the waves crash against the wooden posts. The world felt smaller, quieter, as if time had decided to hold its breath again. Then he spoke. I wasn't honest with you, he said. Not completely. My stomach tightened, but I said nothing. He went on, his voice low but steady. Ilara, the woman I told you about, she didn't just die in a car accident. She died because of me. The wind howled through the pier, sharp and cold. He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon. We argued that night. I told her I wanted space, that I couldn't handle her anymore. She left angry. It was raining. I should have followed her, but I didn't. I found out an hour later she'd crashed on the highway. They said she lost control. I stayed quiet, the sound of the waves suddenly too loud. I've been carrying that guilt ever since, he said. When I met you that night, when you helped me, it wasn't just that you reminded me of her. You made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Like maybe I was allowed to be forgiven. His voice broke slightly on that last word. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to tell him he wasn't the only one haunted by ghosts. But instead, I said softly, You can't carry that forever, Adrian. No one can. He gave a faint smile. You sound like her. She used to say things like that. We fell silent again. The ocean roared quietly below, endless and calm. Then he turned toward me fully. Clara, I didn't plan any of this, but I can't stop thinking about you. And I know how that sounds. Too soon, too strange, too broken. But I need you to know it. My heart stumbled over itself. Adrian, I whispered. You barely know me. He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold air. Maybe, but sometimes knowing someone isn't about time. It's about recognition, the kind that feels older than memory. His eyes searched mine, and for a moment, I believed him. I believed in whatever it was that tied our lives together. Thin, invisible threads pulled across fate's quiet hands. But then he stepped back. I'm leaving the city, he said suddenly. The words hit like a slap. What? Why? I got offered a job up north. I need a reset, a real one this time. I wasn't going to tell you, but I couldn't just disappear again. My throat tightened. So this is goodbye? He hesitated. Maybe not. Maybe just until the snow melts. And then he smiled that same half smile, the one that always looked like it was holding back a secret. Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket and handed me something small, a folded photograph. It was of a lighthouse on a cliff, light shining through a storm. On the back, in his handwriting, it said, When you see this place, you'll know where to find me. Then he turned and walked away, his figure slowly fading into the falling snow. That night, I placed the photo on my bedside table. I stared at it for a long time. The waves, the storm, the light cutting through it all. Something about it felt like both an ending and a beginning. Over the following weeks, I tried to move on. Tried to let him become another chapter, another almost love in the pages of my life. But every time I looked out at the snow, I felt his absence like gravity. Then, one morning, I saw it, on the news. A lighthouse, damaged by the recent coastal storm. The same one from the photo, without thinking. I packed a small bag, and before the sun had fully risen, I was already on the road, chasing the one thing I told myself I wouldn't chase again. A man who had become both a wound and a whisper in my story. The drive to the northern coast took 8 hours, though it felt like years pressed into a single stretch of road. The snow thickened as I drove farther, swallowing the world into shades of white and gray. Each mile felt heavier, not from the distance, but from the weight of what I might find at the end of it. The radio had long fallen silent. My phone had no signal. It was just me, the hum of the engine, and the memory of his voice. When you see this place, you'll know where to find me. The map showed the lighthouse perched at the edge of a small seaside town called Alder Bay, a place so quiet, it didn't even show up properly on GPS. By the time I arrived, dusk had already begun to swallow the sky, painting everything in pale violet. I parked near the old pier, where waves crashed violently against the rocks. The air was thick with salt and cold, and the wind carried whispers that almost sounded like words. The lighthouse stood on a cliff in the distance, tall and lonely, its beam slicing through the mist every few seconds. Steady, patient, unyielding. I made my way up the narrow path leading toward it. Snow crunched beneath my boots, and my breath came in shallow clouds. The path curved around a ridge, and soon the lighthouse loomed above me, its white paint cracked and fading. The door was slightly open. For a long moment, I just stood there, hand on the handle, listening to the waves far below. Then I pushed it open. The air inside was colder than outside, but it smelled faintly of something familiar, old paper and faint traces of cedar. A lantern hung by the wall, still lit, and beside it a coat, his coat. My pulse quickened. "Adrian?" I called softly, my voice echoing against the spiral staircase. No answer. Only the distant crash of waves. I climbed the stairs slowly, one step at a time until I reached the top room, circular, surrounded by glass, with the great lamp in the center casting its slow, rhythmic light across the sea. And there he was, sitting on the floor beside a small table, his head bowed over something in his hands. When he heard my footsteps, he looked up. His eyes widened, and for a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. "Clara," he breathed. "You came." I nodded, words caught somewhere between my throat and my heart. "You didn't think I would?" He gave a soft, almost broken smile. "I hoped you wouldn't. It's not safe here." "What do you mean?" He looked away, out toward the stormy horizon. "This place isn't what it seems. I came here to start over, but instead I found everything I'd been running from." I stepped closer, my voice trembling. "You mean Elara?" He nodded. "Her family lives here, or used to. The night she died, she was driving here, to this very lighthouse, to tell her sister she was leaving me." My heart sank. "I didn't know until a few days ago," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "Her sister sent me a letter after she saw my name in the paper for the restoration project here. She said Elara had written her a note, one that she never got to deliver." He reached for a small envelope on the table, yellowed with time. "She sent it to me." He handed it to me. I hesitated, then unfolded the paper. The handwriting was elegant, careful, the kind of writing you use when you want every word to matter. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. Tell him I forgive him. Tell him I understand. And tell him not to spend his life chasing ghosts. There's still light, even after love dies." Years had passed since that night at the lighthouse, but the memory remained vivid, etched into the way I felt the world, the way I measured time, and the way I understood love. Adrian and I never rushed. Life had taught us patience, the kind born from absence, longing, and the quiet understanding that some things can't be forced. We built our relationship slowly, one morning at a time, learning each other's silences as much as our words. The lighthouse became our sanctuary, a place where the past and present met in perfect balance. On stormy nights, the light swept across the sea, and I would watch it reflect on the waves, remembering the first time I saw him there, the way his eyes held both grief and hope. We often laughed about how I had followed a simple note and a ferry ticket halfway across the country, only to find him waiting, as if the universe itself had been conspiring to bring us together. But there was no laughing in the story that had brought us to that moment. It had been messy, fragile, and painfully real. A love tempered by loss, mistakes, and the courage to feel despite fear. I had learned to embrace uncertainty, to see the beauty in fleeting moments, to understand that not every love story is linear, not every happiness permanent, but every connection can be transformative. Adrian, too, had changed. He was no longer the man haunted by ghosts, hiding from life. He had grown stronger, gentler, more present. And in return, I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. The kind that comes from facing fear, embracing vulnerability, and allowing someone to see you completely. One spring morning, I walked along the cliffs near the lighthouse, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The sun warmed my face and the salty air filled my lungs. I could feel Adrian behind me, his presence steady, reassuring. He didn't need to speak. His hand brushed mine, a silent promise, a constant reminder of the night that changed everything. "Do you ever think about that first night?" I asked quietly. He smiled, looking out over the horizon. "Every day, I think about how fragile everything was, and how lucky we were to find each other in the chaos." I nodded, squeezing his hand. "It taught me something, that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's messy, even when it's uncertain." He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the light of the rising sun, the sea and something deeper, gratitude, understanding, and something unspoken, eternal. "Yes," he whispered, "and you showed me how to truly live again." In that moment, I realized how far we had come, not just in miles, but in heart, in understanding, in presence. We were no longer two broken souls seeking solace. We were two people who had survived storms, faced ghosts, and chosen each other anyway. The lighthouse behind us, the waves below, the sun rising. It was as if the world itself had paused to witness the quiet miracle of our reunion. And I knew, with a certainty that had once seemed impossible, that the night I didn't know him had been the night that allowed me to find him, and ultimately, to find myself. The light continued to sweep across the sea, steady and unwavering, much like the love that had grown quietly, patiently, between us. Some people are meant to meet in the most unexpected ways, at the most unexpected times. And sometimes the most important person we find is the one who teaches us how to feel alive again. Fade out. Soft piano, waves crashing, sunlight reflecting on the sea. Months turned into years, yet the memory of that night never left me. The lighthouse, once a symbol of mystery and longing, had become the cornerstone of my life, and of Adrian's. Every morning, as the sun spilled across the waves, we were reminded of how fragile and fleeting life could be, and yet how beautifully it could unfold if we allowed ourselves to feel. Adrian had grown into a man I barely recognized, not in looks, but in spirit. The shadows that once clung to him had receded, replaced by quiet confidence and an unwavering presence. And I too had changed. The fear that had once held me back, that made me doubt my own heart, had been replaced by a strength born of vulnerability. I had learned that love doesn't demand perfection. It simply asks us to be honest, to show up, to feel deeply. The lighthouse had become our sanctuary. We spent countless nights there, wrapped in blankets, watching the moonlight dance on the water. We shared stories of our past, dreams for the future, and quiet moments where words weren't necessary. Each conversation, each glance, each touch was a reaffirmation of the bond that had started with a note and a ferry ticket, but had grown into something timeless. One particularly serene morning, I woke before the sun. I slipped on my coat, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and quietly made my way to the cliffs above the lighthouse. The air was crisp, the kind of air that makes your lungs ache with life. I watched as the first hints of dawn painted the horizon in shades of gold and pink. Adrian joined me silently, wrapping his arm around my shoulders. "You always find the best moments," he whispered. "I think I'm just learning to see them," I replied. We stood there together, letting the world wake around us. The lighthouse behind us, the waves crashing below, the gulls calling above. It was a scene I would never tire of. It reminded me that life, like the sea, was always moving, always changing, but also capable of holding steady moments of beauty and connection. Later that day, as we walked through Alder Bay, we ran into familiar faces: fishermen, shopkeepers, children playing on the pier. They all knew our story by now, the tale of two people who had found each other against all odds. There was no judgment in their eyes, only a quiet acknowledgement of something rare and precious. Adrian took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, and I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met that night?" he asked. I thought about it, letting the memory wash over me. The lighthouse, the letter, the ferry ticket, the uncertain night when everything had shifted. "I try not to," I said softly. "Some things are meant to be, and some nights are meant to change everything." He smiled, leaning his forehead against mine. "Then I guess we were lucky," he murmured. As the day stretched into evening, we returned to the lighthouse. The light swept across the water, a constant, unwavering presence. It reminded me of the night I first saw him there, the night that had set everything into motion. But now the light felt different. It felt like hope, like continuity, like a promise that no matter how many storms life threw our way, we would face them together. We sat on the small balcony, watching the horizon, sharing coffee and stories. We talked about our dreams, small ones, like planting a garden on the cliffside, and big ones, like traveling the world and discovering places neither of us had ever seen. We laughed, we remembered, we planned. Each word, each smile, each glance deepened the connection that had begun that fateful night. As darkness fell, the lighthouse beam cut through the night, casting a golden path across the waves. I leaned against Adrian, letting the rhythmic sound of the ocean fill me with a sense of peace I had never known. "Do you think the world brings people together for a reason?" I asked quietly. "I do," he said. "Sometimes it's not about the timing or the circumstances. It's about finding the person who makes everything else make sense, the person who teaches you to feel, even after you thought you couldn't." I nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle in my chest. That night, that one moment in the lighthouse had been a spark. And from that spark, we had built a life filled with understanding, compassion, and love. We stayed there long into the night, the stars above us and the light sweeping endlessly across the sea. I realized then that life would continue to change, to test us, to challenge us. But as long as we faced it together, I knew we could endure anything. Adrian turned to me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Thank you for coming back," he whispered. I smiled, my heart full. "Thank you for waiting." And in that moment, standing on the cliffs above the lighthouse, I understood that some stories don't have neat endings. Some stories are meant to live, breathe, and evolve, carrying the memory of that first night in every sunrise, every wave, every quiet moment shared. The lighthouse continued to shine, unwavering. And so did we. Two hearts once lost, now found, navigating the endless, beautiful uncertainty of life together. Fade out, soft piano, waves crashing, lighthouse beam cutting through the night, the sound of a gentle wind echoing across the cliffs. Winter returned to Alder Bay like it always did, blanketing the cliffs, the streets, and the lighthouse in a delicate layer of frost. The world seemed quieter, slower, as if the cold had muted its usual chaos. I loved this time of year, not just for the soft snow and the way the lights shimmered across the waves, but for the way it allowed space to reflect, to feel, to remember. Adrian and I had settled into a rhythm, not one born of habit, but one born of choice. Each morning we woke together, sharing coffee on the balcony, watching the gulls wheel above the crashing surf. Each night we returned to the lighthouse, the beacon casting a gentle light over the darkness, reminding us that even in uncertainty, there could be clarity. One evening, as a soft snowfall began, I found myself lingering longer in the small kitchen, watching Adrian chop vegetables for dinner. The steam rising from the stove mingled with the warmth in the room, and I realized I had never felt more at home anywhere, or with anyone. "You've been quiet," he said, noticing my gaze. "Thinking about something?" I smiled softly. "Just remembering." He raised an eyebrow, leaning against the counter. "Memories can be dangerous," he teased. "Not tonight," I replied. "Tonight they feel comforting." I told him about that first night at the lighthouse. The way I had arrived uncertain, lonely, and hesitant. The way he had been waiting, unknowingly prepared to become a part of my story. As I spoke, Adrian listened, eyes fixed on me, his expression unreadable but gentle. "I think about that night often," he admitted. "How strange it is that one moment can change the direction of your entire life." I nodded, feeling the truth of that statement settle in my chest. I never knew what I was missing until I saw you, and yet it took so long to find the courage to reach for it. He took my hand, squeezing it gently. Sometimes courage isn't about rushing toward love. Sometimes it's about waiting long enough to understand what it truly means. The night stretched before us, snowflakes drifting against the windows, soft music from the old record player filling the room. We spoke of hopes, of fears, of the moments that had defined us before we met. The heartbreaks, the mistakes, the missed opportunities. And slowly, carefully, we began to unravel the parts of ourselves we had hidden, even from those we loved most. "You've changed me," I whispered after a long pause. "Not just in the way I love, but in the way I see the world, the way I see myself." Adrian's gaze softened, and I could see the reflection of the flickering lights in his eyes. "And you've changed me," he said quietly. "You taught me that life doesn't have to be a series of regrets, that it can be full of moments worth living for, that it can be beautiful." We lingered in the quiet of the room, wrapped in blankets, sharing warmth and trust. The snow continued to fall outside, each flake a reminder that the world moved on, even as we held still within our sanctuary. Hours later, after the kitchen was tidied and the night deepened, we stepped onto the balcony. The lighthouse cast its rotating light across the cliffs, illuminating the snow-covered rocks and the restless sea below. Adrian pulled me close, and I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never want to forget that first night," I murmured. "Or the way it felt to find you." "You won't," he said softly, "because it's the beginning of everything we have now, and everything we'll have in the future." I closed my eyes, letting the cold air sting my cheeks while the warmth of his embrace seeped into my bones. The world was vast and unpredictable, but in this moment, I knew that no matter what storms came, we would face them together. The snow swirled around us, the lighthouse beam cutting through the darkness, steady and unwavering. And as I held Adrian, I realized that some nights aren't just memories. They are anchors, holding us to the moments that truly matter. Some people come into your life not to complete you, but to awaken you, to show you what it means to live, to feel, to love. That night at the lighthouse had been such a night of awakening, a night that would ripple through the years, shaping every choice, every heartbeat, every dawn that followed. And as the winter deepened, bringing both chill and clarity, I knew one thing for certain: love, when it is real, never fades. It waits, it grows, it illuminates, just like the lighthouse, just like Adrian, just like the night that began it all. Fade out. Soft piano, the whisper of the wind, the sound of waves beneath the snow-covered cliffs, the lighthouse beam slowly sweeping across the night. The days following that snowy night passed in a strange golden haze. Winter in Alder Bay had a way of slowing life down, making ordinary moments feel sacred. I found myself noticing details I hadn't before. The way the sunlight fell on the snow, the faint scent of pine from the cliffs, the subtle warmth in Adrian's smile when he thought I wasn't looking. We spent most of our mornings at the lighthouse, sometimes quietly reading, other times simply staring at the sea, letting the world move around us while we remained in our cocoon of silence and shared presence. There was comfort in that quiet, a reassurance that we could exist together without words and yet be entirely understood. One evening, after dinner, Adrian suggested a walk along the pier. The air was crisp, each breath visible as clouds in the streetlight glow. Snow crunched beneath our boots, and I could feel the cold biting at my cheeks, but it didn't matter. I was warm from within, from the steady pulse of emotions I had long buried, but had now been awakened by him. "You've been quiet again," Adrian remarked, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Thinking about something?" I hesitated, wondering how much I should reveal. My thoughts had wandered to that night, to the way I had hesitated before opening my heart, to the long months of reflection since. "I've been thinking about us," I admitted finally. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable but attentive. "Us?" "Yes," I said softly. "About what this means, what it could mean. How much I've waited, without even knowing, for someone like you to arrive and make me feel alive again." Adrian stopped walking, turning to face me. The snow fell in thick, soft flakes, coating his hair and shoulders, but the world around us seemed to blur, leaving only him and me in crystal clarity. "I've been thinking about that too," he said, his voice almost a whisper. I never knew what it meant to truly want someone, to feel every heartbeat echoing in sync with another, until that night. A shiver ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the intensity of his gaze. There was a weight in his eyes, a raw honesty that left no room for pretense. "Do you ever wonder if we're moving too fast?" I asked. He took my hands in his fingers warm against the chill. "No," he said without hesitation. "I think we've been moving at the right pace all along, slowly enough to understand, quickly enough to feel it fully." We continued along the pier, silence wrapping around us like a protective blanket. Each step was measured, deliberate, as if the world itself was allowing us this moment of unspoken connection. And then, unexpectedly, he stopped again, pulling me close. The snow fell around us, obscuring everything else, and for a brief, suspended moment, time seemed to bend. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Something I've kept to myself for too long." My heart raced. "What is it?" I asked, though a part of me feared the answer. "I've carried regret for years," he admitted, looking down at the wooden planks beneath our feet. "Regret for the choices I didn't make, the words I didn't speak, the moments I let slip away. And for so long I didn't believe I could ever find this, you." A wave of emotion surged through me. "Adrian," I whispered, unable to complete the sentence. Words felt small, insufficient. He lifted his gaze, meeting mine with intensity. "You've awakened something in me I thought was lost forever. I didn't know how to find it until that night. Until you." Tears pricked my eyes. I had spent so long guarding my heart, believing that vulnerability was dangerous, that love demanded caution. But with Adrian, every fear seemed to dissolve, replaced by a profound certainty that what we shared was real. I didn't know how much I needed this, I confessed. I didn't know how much I needed you until that night. And even now, it feels like I'm only beginning to understand it. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch gentle, reverent. "Then let's not rush to understand it fully," he said. "Let's just feel it, every moment, every heartbeat. Together." We stayed on the pier long after the cold had seeped through our coats, standing close, hands intertwined, hearts synchronized. The lighthouse behind us cast its rotating beam across the water, a constant reminder of light in the darkness, guidance through uncertainty, and the promise of constancy in a changing world. That night, as we returned to the lighthouse, I felt a sense of completeness I hadn't known was possible. The storm of emotions that had haunted me for years, the longing, the doubt, the fear, had been replaced by clarity. Love, when it was real, didn't demand perfection. It demanded presence, honesty, and courage, and with Adrian, I had all three. We sat together by the fireplace, sipping tea, letting the warmth seep into our bones. I glanced at him, feeling a surge of gratitude for every twist of fate that had led us to this point. Every missed opportunity, every heartbreak, every lonely night. It had all been leading us here, to this quiet, perfect understanding. The following morning, the lighthouse was bathed in the soft golden glow of early winter sunlight. Snow clung stubbornly to the edges of the cliffs, glittering like scattered diamonds. I lingered by the window, watching the world outside, feeling the quiet hum of life around me. Adrian was in the kitchen, humming softly as he prepared breakfast, the aroma of fresh bread and brewed coffee weaving through the warm air. For a moment, I just watched him. There was something undeniably magnetic about the way he moved, even in the most mundane tasks. It was as if every gesture, every glance carried intention, a subtle grace that I hadn't realized I'd missed until I saw it now, every morning, unfolding naturally before me. "Morning," he said, glancing up with a smile. "Sleep well?" I nodded, still caught in the spell of the quiet sunrise. "Better than I have in a long time," I admitted. "Being here, it feels like I've finally arrived somewhere I was meant to be." Adrian placed the plate of eggs and toast in front of me, his hands lingering slightly longer than necessary. "I think we all need a place like that," he said softly. "Somewhere to just breathe, to exist without the world pressing on our shoulders." I smiled, feeling warmth seep into my chest. "And some people," I said carefully, "make that place possible, without even trying." His eyes met mine, searching, weighing, acknowledging. "Then I hope I can always be that person for you," he said, voice low and sincere. We ate in silence, letting the quiet stretch comfortably between us, punctuated only by the soft clinking of utensils and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. And yet beneath the calm there was a tension, a subtle, unspoken acknowledgement that the past wasn't entirely behind us. Later that afternoon, as I wandered along the cliffs alone, snow crunching underfoot, I felt the weight of memories I had thought were buried, old relationships, choices I had made, or hadn't made, flickered through my mind like ghostly echoes. And among them, one name always surfaced. I hadn't seen or spoken to my college love Liam in nearly a decade. He had been my first real heartbreak, a person I had trusted completely, only to have the foundation of that trust crumble beneath me. And yet, as the wind swept across the cliffs and the waves crashed below, I realized that part of me had never fully let him go. It was a revelation that struck with both clarity and pain. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to remember not just the hurt, but the love, the laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams we had spun together in the haze of youth. And suddenly, Adrian's presence beside me became even more precious. When I returned to the lighthouse, I found him waiting in the study, a book in his hands, eyes flicking up to greet me. "You've been quiet," he observed. "I've been thinking," I admitted, trying to anchor myself in the present, about how the past never really leaves us, about how even old regrets and lost loves are part of who we are now. He closed the book, setting it aside, and gestured for me to sit beside him. "The past shapes us," he said gently, "but it doesn't have to define us. What matters is what we choose to carry forward, and what we let go of." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deep inside me. "And with you," I whispered, "I feel like I'm learning to carry forward in a way that doesn't hurt. That doesn't hold me back." Adrian reached out, his fingers brushing mine. "We're allowed to have histories," he said softly. "To remember, to reflect, to learn. But we also have the right to create something new, something better, something stronger." The evening came with a snowstorm, heavy and relentless, cloaking Alder Bay in a thick white blanket. We huddled by the fire, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea and sharing small stories, each one revealing fragments of our souls. Adrian spoke of his childhood summers spent by the coast, of dreams he had long postponed, of the quiet moments of joy that often went unnoticed. I shared my own stories, hesitations and regrets, feeling lighter with each confession. It was strange, the intimacy of being completely known by someone who had arrived in my life only recently, yet already seemed timeless. By nightfall, the storm had quieted, leaving the world sparkling and pristine. Adrian took my hand, leading me to the balcony. The lighthouse beam cut across the snow-covered cliffs, reflecting off the icy waves. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Yes," I murmured. "And fragile. Like this moment. Like us." He leaned closer, his forehead resting gently against mine. "Then let's protect it," he whispered. "Let's cherish it. Every day. Every heartbeat." I closed my eyes, letting the cold air sting my cheeks, while the warmth of his presence enveloped me. That night, I understood a profound truth. Love is not just about passion or desire. It is about trust, understanding, and the courage to let someone in, fully, completely, without holding back. The lighthouse, the snow, the quiet harbor, they were no longer mere settings. They had become witnesses to a love that was quietly fierce, steady, and enduring. And as I held Adrian close, listening to the distant crash of waves against the rocks, I knew that whatever storms lay ahead, we would face them together. Fade out, piano notes, wind whispering through the cliffs, snow falling silently, the lighthouse beam sweeping across the night, a quiet promise of love, enduring through time. The morning after the storm, Alder Bay was calm. Snow blanketed the cliffs and rooftops, sparkling under the pale sun. I stood by the lighthouse window, watching the world slowly awaken. Adrian appeared behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Good morning," he murmured, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Good morning," I replied, smiling. The warmth of his embrace felt like home. We didn't need words. Not anymore. The quiet understanding, the shared glances, the heartbeat-to-heartbeat connection, it said everything. Some love stories don't need grand gestures. They thrive in silence, in small moments, in the courage to be fully present. And with Adrian, I had found mine. Fade out, soft piano, snow sparkling outside, the lighthouse beam turning slowly across the peaceful bay, love settled, quiet, and enduring.